Hi, I'm Larry Magid, CEO of ConnectSafely.org, the U.S. host of Safer Internet Day. And I'm with Eric Hahn, who's the head of safety for TikTok in the United States. So first of all, Eric, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And let's start by talking a little bit about TikTok. I think most of our viewers know what TikTok is, but there are probably some that don't know what's unique about TikTok and sort of what makes it special and why so many teens love it.
I can speak to why I came to TikTok. So a little bit about myself first. I've been around the block. I've worked in trust and safety my whole life. I started off as a moderator at Google, spent a lot of time in policy at Twitter. So I've seen many different manifestations of trust and safety. For myself, what brought me to TikTok was I kept hearing about this platform being, hey, it's the last sunny corner of the internet. It feels like 15 giant parades happening at one time. So when I joined the platform, and certainly when I joined the team, the community, both within the safety team and the coworkers that I have, as well as the product itself, was proportionate to each other. It felt very vibrant, very new. Diversity and inclusion are two big principles that we have that we try to seek as a North Star. So I think that's why it's taken the world by storm, is that when it's kind of fun when you open up an app and feel good about something, which has been very pleasant for us.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I mean, it really does differ from other social media platforms. It even differs from other video platforms. And part of it is the relatively short videos on TikTok, but there's also something about the attitude of people who post on TikTok.
Yeah, it's like, I think the one thing I noticed was that the language or the way folks express themselves on the platform is just fresh and new, right? The best way I could explain it to my parents when I told my parents I was joining TikTok, which is like, what is TikTok? Was it just felt like a whole new generation finding new ways to communicate with each other. And every video I saw was either something delightfully weird or funny, and I
Mhm.
can't really explain it. You just have to download it, and you kind of get within that culture after a while.
So let's start with just, we want to talk about safety, privacy, security on TikTok, but let's just start with some general advice about safety on TikTok. And some of that I think is going to apply to other platforms as well, and some may be TikTok specific.
Certainly. So there's a saying that I have on my team that we always try to remind ourselves of, is that our mission is never accomplished, it's never complete. And what we mean by that is when we think about community safety, and specifically for TikTok, it's that how do we remain that sunny corner of the internet when someone joins TikTok, they feel they're in a safe environment to be their authentic selves. And with so much that changes over the course of time for platforms like ours, it is us acknowledging that we'll always have to be two steps ahead around the corner to make sure that everyone feels safe. So part one of that is to make sure that everybody feels like they can empower themselves to create their own experience by offering a range of privacy tools. So kind of the basics, right? Like our platform allows you to become either private or public. Obviously, if you're private, only certain people that follow you can see your content. We want to be as nuanced as possible with that too. So if you do choose to be public, you could also make private your videos, or
Mhm.
choose who gets to, we have features called duet or react. Choose who gets to duet or react with you. And obviously, like other platforms, we also have features that are related to blocking, to reporting. If you do see something that might be abusive or unwanted, you could always report it to us. I think the thing for us that's most important, or equally important to that, is making sure that we also have the right teams, subject matter experts across policy, moderation, technologies. And one of the things that we always scope to is, can we detect, triage, and if we can, when we can, prevent incidents before they happen? So we don't have to rely on users and folks like you to tell us where the problem is. We're always trying to be proactive in that sense.
I want to dig into privacy and also reporting and blocking and some of those other tools in a moment. But I want to start in sort of a general concept about things like time management. And one of the things that I'm very concerned about, not so much on TikTok and specifically, but in general, is authenticity and this pressure to
Mm.
somehow be perfect.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of Instagram thinking about that. I know you guys are thinking about it, how people can be online, obviously present a good side of themselves, but not be a perfect person. And also, as you watch TikTok videos, not to compare yourself with these perfect people or seemingly perfect people that you may see on those videos.
Yeah. I think in the concept of digital well-being, right? And for myself, it's something that I struggle with in terms of I can catch myself sometimes being on TikTok for about an hour, and then we'll have videos interspersed every now and then from our creator community that we partnered with, specifically to make videos like, hey, we've noticed you've been on TikTok for a while. You probably might want to go take a walk, play with your dog, go make lunch. That has been very effective with me. And part of that is emblematic of encouraging our users to have a healthy relationship with the app, right? So on top of interspersing those videos within your feed, we also have features like screen time management, right? So, and this is connected with another feature we have for our parents and families called family pairing. You can determine how much time you want to have on TikTok, right? So you can cap at X minutes or X hours. So it could stop your scrolling on TikTok to encourage some of that. I
Mhm.
think to your second point around authenticity, I think that's part of the appeal of TikTok, right? Is that when you join, you sign up, and then here's your For You page, and it's a lot of content. And this goes back to the metaphor I was mentioned earlier, which is like it feels like a bunch of parades are happening at one
Mhm.
time. You don't have context of what we're celebrating, but it's all there. And because of that, it's less specific or less contingent on your real life relationships with others. It feels like you're judged less because you don't have a social graph or social network as what you're traditionally used to. So I think it's a combination of how the culture has evolved in TikTok, but also for us acknowledging that those issues will exist regardless of how fast or slow we grow, and offering things like screen time management is something that we'll continue to do.
You know, as you were talking about time management, my smartwatch vibrated to tell me it was time to go for a little walk. I will wait until we're done, but it does remind me that sometimes we do need a little bit of nudging,
Yeah.
because it's really easy to get just sucked into whether it's work or play and just be staring at that computer or that phone far too much of the time.
Especially now, right? I think
Yeah.
we talked about earlier before we started this is that we're all at home now with COVID. And in the same way, when I'm watching 15 episodes of Jeopardy on Netflix and it's telling me, do you really want to keep watching? I'm like, of course I do. Right?
Yeah.
We want to have some of that same behavior or nudges for folks to like, hey, go take a walk, go have a drink of water. There, we'll be here. You take care of your inner peace first.
If only we could program my food to tell me to stop eating, then I'd have a little more balance in that area. So let's dig into the privacy. You recently made an announcement regarding privacy, especially for teenagers, actually changing some of the defaults. Can you talk a little bit about, first of all, why you have different privacy policies, or at least defaults, for different age groups, even within the teenage age groups, and how that's being implemented?
Yeah, so when we talked about earlier, like safety being our first priority, making sure that people feel comfortable enough to express themselves, that's especially true for our younger users. Quick anecdote: I moved back to California about 2 years ago. I was looking for a place to live. My realtor asked me what I do. I explained what I did. And the next 30 minutes was a litany of questions of, I have a 14 and 16-year-old. Can you please tell me how to talk to them about the internet? Right. So, of course, that's just an anecdote, but I've found that to be representative across the board. Folks just need a hand in terms of how do I manage online safety when I'm part of a family or when I have a child, right? So to your point, one of the things that we've changed recently, and this is emblematic of how much safety is a moving target, we're always going to learn and change and evolve. One of the things we wanted to do was think about what does safety and privacy by design look like?
Mhm.
And one of those things was, hey, we really think that users from a certain age group, specifically from 13 to 15, will probably be safer if we defaulted them to private, if we defaulted their commenting behavior and tightening up that a little bit. Maybe change how they're recommended and default that to off. So thinking about that was really important to us. And a lot of that was really made possible with the partnerships that we have, not only yourself and Connect Safely. And thank you again for developing the Parents Guide to TikTok, which has been
Thank you.
super helpful for us. But other organizations like Family Online Safety Institute and the National PTA, organizations like that really help us inform how we should evolve over time.
Thank you for mentioning that. Let's talk about privacy settings, the actual tools that are available to any TikTok user to really have a little bit of granular control over who sees information about them and who sees their videos.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, anyone can choose whether or not they want a public or a private account. When you go private, as I mentioned earlier, that will restrict your account. Only certain people can see and interact with you. But going back to the point of making sure that we have enough nuance with a lot of our protections. So a lot of the feedback that we got from our users, and I certainly had the same feedback for other platforms that I use, is sometimes I want to be public, but I also want to
Mhm.
tighten down some of the privacy that I have. So within that, even when you're public, you can make certain parts of our features private. You can determine who can interact with you from a messaging standpoint. We have features called duet and reacts that are wildly popular on TikTok. If you've been on TikTok, you can see people creating whole musicals out of duets and reacts. I think a month ago we did the Ratatouille musical that was sponsored by Disney, and that started from people just duetting and reacting, folks. That also becomes, well, people wanted nuance features and privacy settings there. So we offer that to them. So when you go into our safety center, and we also have a youth portal specifically for parents and younger users, you can learn how to be informed. You can learn about how to take control on some of the features that you have.
Now, unfortunately, people who are on TikTok are people, and people come in all shapes and sizes and values and behavioral tendencies, and some of them harass, some of them bully. Sometimes you might just have somebody that they may not be a bad person, but they're just annoying you for whatever reason. So let's talk about ways in which you can block or mute or otherwise, take a break from people who may be bothering you for one reason or another.
Of course, yeah, like that's always step one, right? And when it goes back to how do you empower users to control their own experience, it's a feature as old as time. Now that I think about it, is how do you make sure that blocking and reporting is ubiquitous across the platform? So that's why within the app we make it really easy for you to report accounts or report videos or even report comments and audios, any type of feature on the
And
platform.
just what happens if you report? What happens to that report?
Yeah, so that report goes to a specialized team across the many different subjects that we have. So we have 10 community guidelines. Within each of those community guidelines, there are different policies and rules within that, right? So when you think about hate speech or hateful behavior, that goes from ideologies, that connects to things like bullying, that connects to other things like violent extremism. So you have specialized teams that review both the content itself and sometimes the account, right? It just
Mhm.
depends on what is reported. And when it goes there, they apply the policy and they review the content or the account that's reported to them.
Now, I know it's less of an issue on TikTok than it is on some other social platforms, but misinformation is really a plague in our society right now. People are making bad choices, sometimes around their health with the COVID crisis based on information that's just not true. So how are you approaching that challenge on TikTok?
My first question when I joined was, what are we doing about the election, right? And I
Yeah,
joined
the election. Yeah.
about a year and a half ago. And that year and a half ago was we have a task force standing up across the board, not only trust and safety, but security, our operations team, our legal team, making sure that we had tight and precise perspective on what we would do with misinformation. And we've taken a fairly strict stance when it comes to all forms of misleading information, whether it's mis or disinformation. So for example, and I mentioned the election, very early on, we started seeing content that we would categorize as harmful disinformation. So if you look up content that have to do with, for example, QAnon, you look up a search, we tell you, we're not going to surface this content to you, and we're going to lead you to the community guidelines. On top of that, we have teams specialized in misinformation that are supposed to very much dig deep into what does mis and disinformation look like from the political or social space, from the health and medicine space, and also connect with third-party experts. So we have third-party fact checkers that have a very fast turnaround time with us. When we can't find something, and we have a research team trying to validate what is true or not. When we can't find information, we go to organizations like Lead Stories or Science Feedback or PolitiFact that help us determine these things in real time. You mentioned health and medicine, especially now as we're all at home because of this pandemic. As the vaccine comes out, mis and disinformation around health might pop up as well. So that same team is standing up. Those same fact checkers are working with us. And we have internal projects here to make sure that we're pushing authoritative and authentic information to users, right? So COVID-19, we have a safety hub specifically for that. Sometimes you'll see a banner on videos that have to do with health. So for example, if Dr. Knock is talking about the vaccine on TikTok, you'll see a banner at the bottom that leads you to those hubs. So it's a combination of offering that information, blocking or limiting information that we have deemed mis or disinformation, and making sure we have teams internally dealing with escalations as they come.
And again, I haven't heard as much of this about TikTok as I have on with Facebook and Twitter, but how do you deal with any accusations of censorship? I mean, this notion that if you are saying that the election wasn't rigged, and I believe it was not rigged, but yet there are people who do believe it was rigged and have been putting a lot of effort into trying to convince the rest of us. How do you handle those kinds of critiques from people who think you're being overbearing?
So TikTok is a platform, and this goes back to that idea that we're the last sunny core of the internet, as folks have called us, right? So we're a place for joy, creativity, entertainment, a little bit of levity, right?
Hmm.
And part of that is making sure that, and this is what our users tell us too, is that we don't want content that has to do with hate, misinformation, extremism, right? So for us, we think because we are that platform, and that's what our users want, we're making a bolder stance in terms of making sure that content that either incites, glorifies, or promotes that type of content doesn't belong on our platform.
Great. Well, I would certainly applaud that. The last question I'll ask you, and then I think we need to get going, is just this general toxicity that we've been dealing with. We talked a little bit about this earlier about reporting and bullying, but some of it you can't really report. Some of it is just in the air. There's sort of an anger. There's just a lot going on in our society right now, and some of this may go away as we get further from the election, and maybe when we have COVID in the rearview mirror. But it's still very much part of it. You mentioned the joy, and I think that's terrific. But we are swimming in a larger sea, and I'm just curious your thoughts of how we not just TikTokers but all of us can get past that.
I think that's the $64,000 question, right? I think it's something myself and my colleagues talk about frequently. It's something my friends and family talk about frequently, which is how do we sway away from the discourse that sometimes we see on the internet. And I think fortunately for us at TikTok, we're still, as I mentioned earlier, still seen as a place where when you open it and you close it, you feel positive, you feel like a bright light of sun has come down on you. And for us is how do we maintain that over time? And one of the value propositions as we maintain that over time is how does this impact or influence the internet at large to kind of sway some of that discourse away, to be a little bit more positive and a little bit more joyful. And obviously that's not my job to do that for all the internet, but I think it's something that we hope to do and set an example for.
And regardless of what your political persuasions are, regardless of what your ethnic or racial or religious beliefs are, or who your identity is, I think we all have that in common: joy and levity, and maybe we go into certain dark places once in a while, but at some point, we all like the light and the sunshine. I think that's something that TikTok and others can learn from as a way to bring us together. Eric Hahn, I really appreciated our conversation, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Larry.